Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. In the last lecture, we have talked about the different external forces that you need to analyze when you are conducting your external audit. Today, we're going to talk about the last category of these forces, which is the competitive forces. One of the main important elements or parts of your external audit is that you have a look and identify who are your rival firms and determine the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats that they are facing. What are their capabilities? What are their objectives and their strategies? So here you are looking at them. You're not looking at the strengths and the weaknesses of yourself, about the opportunities and threats of you, but for your competitors. What could be their strengths? What could be their weaknesses? What could be the threats that might face? What could be the opportunities that they might have? Not you. How is that possible, and what do you mean by this? First, to identify who are your most competitive companies in order to try to gather information about them and analyze them. You need first to look at the companies that are actually trying hard and strive to continually increase the market share. They want to increase the market share, so they are really harsh competitors. They use the vision and mission as a guide for all their decisions. So they are know what they are doing, they are following the mission and visions. Whether it's broke or not, they fix it, make it better. Do you remember that role? That one when we are talking about some of the problems for not developing strategies and managing by the approach that if it's not broken, don't fix it? No. Here, competitive companies or high rivals are the companies that if it's not broken, if it's still working, they still try to make it work better. So this means that they are high competitors. They continually adapt, innovate, and improve. So they are always the time working on innovating their products or developing their service or improving their quality and so on. The acquisition is essential to growth. They acquire other companies, and this helps them grow. They hire and retain the best employees and managers possible. These companies are always keen on hiring and retaining best employees and managers. They strive to stay cost competitive on a global basis. So these companies, these are the characteristics of the companies that are considered highly competitive. Okay, so what are the key questions that you should ask yourself about regarding your competitors? What are the strengths of our major competitors? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their objectives and what are their strategies? So here you are in the stage of gathering information, and that's part again of your external audit. That's part of your analysis of your competitors, because if you understand your competitors well, you will try to, let's say, تعلي عليه, like I say, you try to be better than him. You try to if you have that strength, so you try to work more on your strengths. If you have that weakness, you try to have a strength that is on the same side, that's like you say, that's that strength he doesn't have, or if he have that weakness, so you develop something that he will not be able to compete with you in. So you understand their objectives and strategies, and you have a look at how these competitors are responding to the economic changes, to the culture, to the environment. How do they respond to all these factors? You learn from them, given that they are good competitors. So how about their products? How are your own products relative to them? To what extent you are far from them? To what extent new firms are entering and old firms are leaving that industries? How about the relationship between the distributors and suppliers in that industries? To what extent you have substitute products. We're going to talk about this in seconds. So at this stages, you conduct what we call competitive intelligence. Competitive intelligence means it's a systematic and ethical process for gathering and analyzing information about the competition's activities and general business trends to further a business own goals. Again, competitive intelligence means you are systematically analyzing and gathering information, and gathering them about your competitors. And here we say it is legal, okay? So we're talking about legal way of gathering informations and analyzing them about your competitors in order to help you develop your own business and goals. There are three basic objectives for conducting a competitive intelligence programs. First is to provide a general understanding of the industry in general and of the competitors. Second, to identify which competitors are vulnerable and to assess the impact of strategic actions could have on your competitors. Meaning, you are trying to see, when you are conducting your competitive intelligence, you want to understand the industry in general. You want to understand the characteristics of your competitors. And you want to understand, if I'm taking some strategic actions, how my competitors will react to this, how my competitors will respond to this, okay? Also, to identify potential moves that the competitors might make and that would affect my position in the market. So if you understand your competitors, that will help you understand, if I'm taking such a step, what would my competitors do in such a situation? So here, competitive information is very important, and it's equally applicable to all the stages of the strategy formulations, implementation, and evaluation decisions. So that kind of information will help you in these three stages of the strategy. Let's have a look at the Porter's five forces model of competition. That model helps you analyze your competitors, help you gather the information needed for the external audit and for the competitive forces factors. Let's have a look at these forces. The first one, it's called rivalry among competing firms. Then we have the potential entry of new competitors, potential development of substitute products, bargaining power of suppliers, and bargaining power of consumers. Let's start explain each one in deep details. This model, in fact, Porter's five forces model of competitions, aims to identify the key elements of each of the competitive forces, each of these forces, okay, and evaluate how strong is it for the organizations, and help us understand, is it worth to enter that and stay in that industry or not? Let's start with the first four. Rivalry among competing firms. Here, that force is actually the most powerful of the five forces. Rivalry among competing firms is the most powerful of the five forces. What is the aim of this force? That force actually focuses on the competitive advantage of strategies over other firms. What my competitor organizations have strategy, what is their strategy, and why it's better than mine. It means that changes in a strategy by one firm may be met with the retaliation moves of the other firm, maybe by lowering prices, enhancing quality, and so on. And if the rival firm senses some kind of weakness in you, they will try to increase the marketing and production efforts to capture that opportunity. Here, high rivalry among competing firms means there is a very high competition between these firms. Firms are very competing so much. Each one of these firms are actually keeping an eye on the other firm. That's why we are saying it's the most powerful, because each one sees, looking at your strategy and see if you have make a new product, then they're gonna develop a more developed product. If you're making use of a new technology, they work on developing a more better technology. If you lower the price, they lower the price than you. If you provide enhance the quality, then you enhance the quality as well and add more features and so on. So any change in the new strategy will be meta changes with that other with your competitors' strategy. If they feel like you have a weakness, for example, in the marketing strategy, so they will work hard on their own marketing strategy and develop it. If you find that your production line is not producing so much for technical issues or whatever, they work on producing more of their own product to capture that opportunity. So each one of you, there is a very severe competition, that's force. Then there are certain conditions that might cause high rivalry among competing firms. When the number of competing firms is high, when we have too many firms are competing, when the competing firms are of similar size, you have they are comparing between two organizations that are similar in size, so they have similar conditions, that's why the competition between them is high. When they have similar capabilities, okay, and when the demand for an industry's product is falling, the demand for the product is falling, so there's a kind of high competition between them because there's not enough demand. So each one of them wants to capture that share of the market because there is no such enough demand. So each one of them want to take the same customer. Okay, when the product or service prices is falling, so that it's very similar to when the demand is falling. So each one wants to get the most of or sell most in order, given that already the prices are falling. One consumer can switch brands easily. So if I'm brand X and you're brand Y, if the customer can switch easily from brand X to Y, so each one of them will try to attract that customers. On the contrary, if the customers is very loyal to X, it will be very hard for Y to try to attract the customers who already chooses to buy brand X, for example. For example, let's take one, when consumer demand, we said here the demand, when rivals have excess inventory, meaning if you already have a big inventory, so you want to get rid of it, so you try to increase your marketing and production and so on to compete with others. So all these are examples for the conditions that might cause higher rivalry among competing firms. The second force, it's called the potential entry of new competitors. The criteria, is it easy for new competitors to enter the market or not? Whenever new firms can easily enter the market, can easily enter the industry, the intensity of competitiveness increases. So all these forces are fact. Let's remind ourselves that all these factors are about competition. I'm trying to analyze the competitive forces of the market. I'm trying to have a look at my competitors, study their characteristics that will help me in developing my own strategy. So here I'm saying one of the forces that affects the competitors in the market, the level of competition, is if it's easy for the firm to enter the market or not. If it's easy for firms, different firms, to enter the industry, then competition increases. That's why barriers to entry are important. What do you mean by barriers to entry? Let's take example. If the organization Y will have a lack of experience, so it will be hard for it to enter the market that X competes in. If they need to gain economies of scale quickly, do you remember when you talked about the economies of scale, producing with a large amount to gain the economies of scale? And if that is required quickly, and you are just entering the market, it will be hard for you to gain that economies of scale. So that will be considered a barrier for you to enter. You may not refrain from, and you may refrain from entering that market. If that market or industry needs to gain technology and specialized know-how, if that's these are what? These are considered the barriers for entry. If these factors are there, they might cause a little barrier for some firms to enter. It means it's not easy for firms to enter the market, then there is a lower competition. If these barriers are not there, so it means that it's easier for firms to enter the market, and that increases the level of competition. Barriers to entry is the strong customer reality, meaning that, as is the example I said, if customers are very loyal to product X, very loyal, so whatever new products are there in the market, they still go to product X. That strong customer reality is considered a barrier for entry, because if I'm company Y and want to enter the market, I have to exert a lot of efforts, a lot of marketing efforts, producing a product with a different and a very has a very high competitive advantage compared to product X to attract that loyal customer to X. And if I found that it's that hard, I may refrain from entering that market in the very beginning. Um, Strong brand preferences, also being attached to a certain brand. Large capital requirement. If entering that market or producing that product or delivering that service requires a large capital, that's gonna be a barrier to entry. Lack of adequate distribution channels. If I do not have suitable distribution channels for my product, that might be considered a barrier for entry. Government regulatory policy. If there are certain government regulatory policy that barriers for the entry into the market, that also can be considered a barrier. Tariff, lack of access to raw materials, undesirable locations. If the location that I'm working on is not desirable, potential saturation of the market. If the market is already saturated, there is no room um, for new organizations to enter. Counter attack by firms. If I entered, they will be there. That another firm will developing a strategy to face me. So all these are considered barriers for entering the market. Some firms still insist on entering the market despite the barriers, and they may depend on the quality, the price, the marketing tools can help them overcome. So if you produced a high quality product, or if you offered a lower price with a still good quality, or if you have conducted a lot of marketing campaigns, this might help you overcome some of these barriers. Okay? The third force that we are talking about is the potential development of substitute products. Potential development of substitute product. It means that actually in many of the industries, firms are in competition with producers of substitute products in other industries. It's not the same industry, it's not the same product, but a substitute. Like what? Like if you're talking about plastic containers versus glass containers, they are competing. Though this company makes the materials out of glass and this is a plastic container producers, in your mind, they might not be competitors, but in fact, they are. If we are talking about eyeglasses, and contact lenses, okay, they are actually now facing competition from eye surgery. Can you see? As we are not talking about the competition between eyeglasses and contact lenses, but we're talking about competitions of both eyeglasses and contact lenses with laser surgery, because laser eye surgery is a substitute for eyeglasses. Okay, so when there is a lots of substitutes for your own product, this means there is a high competition here. This increases competition. Newspaper faces substitute competition from the internet, from the cable TV. That's a competition. And the pressure increases when what? Especially when the prices of the substitute decrease, okay? And also when consumers switching cost decrease. يعني إيه؟ It means the prices of substitute decrease. For example, if I'm buying a glass container and then I found a plastic container with a better price, with a lower price and still good quality, I might shift to plastic container, right? Or vice versa. And then also eyeglasses or contact lenses and laser surgery. If I'm changing my eyeglasses every 2 years, for example, and then the eye surgery prices start to decrease and it's more sustainable. So then that might be a choice, so that increases the pressure on eyeglasses and vice versa. Consumer switching costs decrease, meaning that switching cost, meaning the cost to switch from that product to the other product decreases. So the cost for me as a consumer to switch from the glass containers to the plastic container, or to switch from the contact lenses to the laser surgery, or to switch from the newspaper to internet, when that switching cost decreases, that causes more pressure, that causes more competition between these companies. The force of the Porter's model, it's called the bargaining power of supplier. The bargaining power of supplier actually affects the intensity of the competition. Especially when there is few suppliers, few good substitute raw materials, cost of switching raw materials is high. What does it mean? The bargaining power of suppliers. You are a factory and you depend on certain supplier to produce for you the raw materials. The competition increases here when there are already few suppliers that supply for company X and company Y and company Z. And they have a high bargaining power. They can force for you certain prices because there are already few suppliers. And if there are few substitute raw materials, already it cannot switch from raw materials because there are already not enough substitute to change that raw material, so you have to depend on those suppliers. And the cost of switching raw materials is high. If you decided not to buy that raw material because that supplier is giving you a higher price, the cost to change to a new raw materials is high. So in that case, it's often in the interest of both the supplier and producers to help each other with good prices that will help them improve the quality and develop the services and deliver and reduce the inventory. And that's why backward integration is gaining control or ownership of supply. Do you remember the strategy of backward integration? When we said when your suppliers is not reliable, is not delivering the service for you, is not delivering raw materials for you in the right time and so on. So it's better that you acquire that, or you be your own supplier, okay? So that helps in competition in that case, because the bargaining power of suppliers affects the competition. The last force is about the bargaining power of the consumer. When the customers are concentrated or large in number, or they buy in volume, then their bargaining power represents a major force that affects competition in the industry. And we have to consider that the consumer's power is very high when the products are standard and undifferentiated. What does it mean? Let's look at the conditions first so that you can understand. Conditions where the consumers can gain more bargaining power. If the buyers can inexpensively switch. If I can switch between product X and Y very easily and without too much expense, then I have a more bargaining power over company X and Y. If the buyers are particularly important, and I think it's clear, if your buyers are important and you need to keep them, if the sellers are struggling in the face of falling consumer demand, if you are already, the consumer demand is falling, and now you're struggling, so you are trying to attract that customer or that buyer, okay, and he already have a high bargaining power. So there is a high competition here between company X and Y to attract that customers who are actually not that interested in buying, since there is a falling consumer demand for that type of product. Okay, let's say, for example, CDs. Now, how many people actually buy CDs? Most people are using flash memory or whatever. So there is a decreasing or falling consumer demand here. So for the companies want to attract the CD producer companies, if they want to attract customers to buy them, so there is a high competition in here. If buyers are informed about the seller's product prices and cost, if I'm as a buyer already know the prices and the cost for my seller, so that gives me a more bargaining power over the seller. And if buyers have discretion in whether and when they purchase the product, if the buyers have discretion, they have flexibility to decide when they can purchase the product, when and whether they will purchase the product or not, then this gave them more bargaining power. Still, that bargaining power actually affects when what? When the customers already are large number or buy in volume or are concentrated. That's the key. We are not here talking about a single customer, because if you as a single customer can easily switch or so on, that's fine. You're not going to affect the competition between companies. But we are speaking about customers who already buy in big, large numbers. If we are speaking about customers of mobile phone or cell phones. So we are speaking about large numbers compared to CDs. So the people here have a big bargaining power. Okay, that's why there is a high competition between cell phone companies, because consumers already have a big bargaining power. They can buy, but they cannot buy. There are a large number of people who buy this. Okay, that's why that affects the intensity of competition in the industry. Also, if they can buy in volume, meaning they buy a big amount at the same time. That's what's meant by buying in volume. They buy big amounts at the same time. Okay, so here, these are the Porter's 5 forces model that affects the competition level. So where do we actually gather such type of external information? We can have it from unpublished sources or published sources. Unpublished, like conducting a customer surveys or speeches of some of shareholders meetings or television programs or interviews. They can refer to something, and then you can grab that information as an external opportunity or external threat or something. Or you could have published sources in journals, reports, government documents, abstract, books, whatever, newspapers or manuals. All these could be the sources for you, for your strategic information. Okay, so to sum it up, what we have covered in this lecture, we spoke about the fifth force, that category of forces that we need to have a look at when we are conducting our external audit, which is the competitive forces. You're trying to identify your rival firms, their strengths, their weakness, their capabilities, their strategies, and everything about them. So that will help you in building your own strategy. And we talked about what are the characteristics of the firms that are considered the most competitive companies that you need to have a look at. And then we talked about competitive intelligence, the types of informations, the systematic gathering and analyzing information about your competitors. And then we talked about the Porter's five forces model of competitions. What are the different things that you need to look at when you are analyzing your competitive market, when you are looking at your competitors? We talk when you are trying to identify the elements about your competitors, about their firms. We talked about the first factor, the first force, which is the rivalry among competing firms. You are having a look at the firms that will be able, that are very highly competitive to you, that whenever you do something, they retaliate. Whenever they found a weakness in you, they develop that point in their organizations. If you find you have some kind of weakness, they work more to in the marketing and production efforts. So that kind of firms is very harsh to you. So you need to look at them. You look, because there is a very big competition between you and them. And then we looked at the second force, which is it easy for new competitors to enter the market or not? If it's easy, that's going to be a problem. If there are barriers to entry to the market, if there are different barriers to entry the market, then the competition will be less. But if there's no barriers for entry or less barriers, then the competition will be high. And we said you can try to overcome such a competition through quality or price or marketing efforts. And then we talked about the third force, which is the potential development of substitute product. Is it easy and possible for to have substitute products for your own product? How about their prices? Consumers can switch easily or not? If it's easy and if there is a high substitute, then you are in competition with them. So you're not competing only in your industry, but you're also competing with other industries that are substitute for you. And then we talked about the force, which is the bargaining power of suppliers. Do suppliers have a bargaining power for you? If they have a bargaining power, that affects competition. And this especially when you have a few suppliers, you have a few substitutes for the raw materials, then it's better for, as we said, for the suppliers and producers to work together. But if not, then that's going to be an issue that causes a competition. And in that case, your backward integration could be a good strategy for you. And the last force we talked about, which was the bargaining power of consumers. We said when customers are concentrated or large in numbers, they have a big a bargaining power, and that affects the degree of competition in the industry. We talked about the different conditions that give the consumers bargaining power, and we end up our talk about where do you gather the informations and the different sources you can get the external informations. I hope it's clear for you, and thank you for listening, and stay safe and stay home. as always. Thank you so much. Bye bye.